For my final video of 2023, as I will be taking a week break for Christmas, as mentioned in my WRC 2003 video, link in the card on the top right, I thought I would talk about a MotoGP transfer again that's happening next year. I've already made one about Marc Marquez's move to Gresini Honda, for the second time, link in the card on the top right, so I thought it would make sense if I made a video talking about the guy that he's replacing. Now, I will be honest, I didn't rate this guy initially after the first half of the season. However, after his amazing second half of the season, which has saved his Premier Class career in a similar way to Sergio Perez in 2020 in Formula 1, it's safe to say I ended up with pie on my face. So with that being said, strap yourselves in, because this is the story of one of the most amazing turnarounds in form I have ever seen. This is the amazing turnaround of the other Fabio on the grid, Fabio Di Giannantonio. In 2014, DiGi would make his debut in the Red Bull Rookies Cup, which is the same series that the likes of Pedro Acosta came through before he had his amazing 2021 season in Moto3. In his first year in RBRC, he finished in the points in all but one race, which was at the finale, grabbing 2 podium finishes along the way to finish the year in a respectable 8th in the standings. Then, in his second year, DiGi would go even better, finishing second in the standings behind Bo Ben Schneider and claiming 3 wins at the Sachsenring, Brno and Aragon. As a result of his standout year, he would earn himself a ride in Moto3 in 2016 with Gresini, who he would end up riding for most of his career. However, before that, he would end up having a guest appearance for the team at the finale in Valencia, replacing the injured Andrea Locatelli, where he finished a respectable 23rd. His first full year in Moto3 would end up being a good year, as after a tricky first 5 races of the season, he would kick on from round 6 at Mugello to finish 6th in the standings, picking up 3 podiums in the process. He would go one better in 2017, finishing in 5th, before finishing 2nd in 2018 behind Jorge Martin, picking up his first and only 2 wins in Moto3 at Brno and Motegi. And I say only because in 2019, DiGi would move up to Moto2 with Speed Up Racing. However, his 2 years with Speed Up were not something to write home about. In his first season, he would finish 9th in the standings, becoming the highest rookie that season, but was way off teammate Jorge Navarro, who finished up in 4th and had over double the points of DiGi. But given Fabio was a rookie, he could be forgiven for that. However, the following season would end up being a disaster, as even though he beat his teammate Navarro in the standings, the speed up bike that he was riding on did the complete opposite of speeding up, as the team went backwards compared to 2019, which as a result, despite picking up 2 podiums during that season, DiGi would finish a disappointing 15th in the standings with only 65 points to his name. This, as a result, led to DiGi leaving Speed Up at the end of the season to rejoin Gresini for 2021, who were using Kalex bikes, which proved to be a dominant force in 2020. And in his first year with Kalex machinery, DiGi would pick up a 3rd place finish at the first race in Qatar before finishing 10th and 11th in the next 2. And then at Jerez, he would come through to finally take his first ever Moto2 win, winning by over 2 seconds ahead of Marco Bezzecchi. At last, DiGi would have a breakthrough performance in Moto2, however it would turn out to be his only win of the season. He would pick up 2 more podiums that season, both of which were 2nd place finishes, to finish 7th in the championship, 3 points behind Aaron Canet. Overall, it was a good year for DiGi, and one he hoped he would build on in the following season. However, he wouldn't be in Moto2 for 2022, as halfway during the 2021 season, his team Gresini announced that their Premier Class team would be switching to year-old Ducatis from 2022, after Aprilia announced that it would be running the factory team on its own, and also announced their lineup for that season. Their lineup would consist of Enea Bastianini, who was having an amazing rookie season with Avintia, who would rebrand as VR46 for 2022, and he would be partnered by fellow compatriot Fabio Di Giannantonio. After a mixed time in Moto2, DiGi would be making his Premier Class debut in 2022, and he would be doing it with the team that he spent most of his career in the lower categories with. So how would he fare in his first ever season in the Premier Class? Well, let's take a look. The first 6 races of the season didn't go so well for DiGi. Whilst teammate Bastianini shockingly won 2 of the first 6 races to be in the title fight early on, DiGi was struggling to even scrape a point, with the highest finish in those first 6 races being a dismal 17th, 2 places outside of the points. However, at the next race at Le Mans, DiGi would finally get his first points of the season, albeit in a dismal 13th, whilst teammate Ania went on to take his 3rd win of the season. But then, at the next race in Mugello, DiGi would end up having the highlight of his 2022 season, as after wet conditions affected the session, DiGi would come through to take a shocking first ever pole position, demonstrating his wet weather ability and being able to handle the conditions perfectly. In only his 8th Premier Class race, it was an amazing achievement, and one that many MotoGP fans were happy to see. The race, however, wouldn't go in the same direction, as dry conditions meant that DiGi ended up tumbling down the order and ended up finishing 11th, which saw him grab his 2nd points finish of the season. He would then retire from the Catalan Grand Prix due to damage that was caused by an accident that he was involved with, and then he would grab his best finish of the season with an 8th place finish at the Sachsenring. He would then grab 3 more points finishes after that, with a 14th place finish at Assen, an 11th place finish at the Red Bull Ring, and a 15th place finish at the finale in Valencia to finish 20th in the standings on 24 points, whilst teammate Bastianini, who was moving to the Ducati factory team for 2023, finished up in 3rd on a massive 219 points. Overall, apart from his shocking pole position at Mugello, his first season in the Premier Class was not memorable. But given he was a rookie, he could be forgiven for that. For 2023, he would be kept on at Gresini, and with Ania moving to the Ducati factory team, he would be partnered by Alex Marquez, who moved over from LCR Honda. DiGi needed to step up and improve in 2023 if he was to stay in the Premier Class beyond that season. However, the first half of the season didn't go according to plan. Although his first half of the year was better than last year, he was off the pace compared to teammate Alex Marquez, who adapted to the Ducati very quickly and was constantly beating his teammate, with him grabbing his first ever pole position at Argentina and then was able to get a podium in the main race, whilst DiGi finished down in 10th to record his first finish of the season after crashing out at Portimao. He would then go on a run of points up until the Sachsenring, with him equaling his best finish of 8th at Le Mans. However, despite this, he was still being outpaced by Alex Marquez, as in every race they finished up until Alex's injury, which put him out of action for 3 races, Alex beat him in every race, with him even getting a sprint race win at Silverstone. Which, for the record, like with F1, a sprint win doesn't count towards a rider's statistics. Seriously, can we just get rid of the sprint races? It was at this point that speculation began to surface about DiGi's future, as even though he had improved from 2022, his performances were still not at the level the team were expecting. It was also around this time that speculation about Marc Marquez's relationship with Honda started to surface, with rumours that he could leave the Japanese manufacturer a year early due to the frustrating season that he was having with Repsol Honda. At India, DiGi would crash out of the race and would then finish 8th again in both the sprint and main race at Motegi to give him a total of only 53 points, compared to his teammate who was out with an injury who was on 108 points. It was starting to become clear from people on the outside that DiGi was more than likely going to lose his ride, as given the machine he was on, despite the fact that it was a year old compared to the Ducati that the factory team and Pramac were using, he really should have been fighting towards the sharp end of the field on most occasions, like what his teammate was doing, rather than fighting in the midfield or the lower end of the points. And this was reaffirmed when on the 4th of October 2023, it was announced that Marc Marquez would be leaving Honda at the end of the season, with it being believed that he was on his way to Gresini, which was then officially announced a week later by Gresini themselves, which meant as a result, DiGi would not be riding for the team in 2024. And given his performances up to that point weren't anything to write home about, combined with the fact that all but one team had riders confirmed for 2024, many people believed that DiGi was heading back to Moto2. However, it seemed that his release from Gresini lit a spark in the remaining racers, as in the following race at Indonesia, something clicked inside of DiGi as he put in a stellar performance at Mandalika to finish 6th in the sprint race and then record a career best finish in the main race of 4th, just outside of the podium. It was an amazing ride and one that made everyone question where on earth was this pace throughout the year. So much so that in the next race at Phillip Island, DiGi proved that his pace at Mandalika was not a one-off, as in the main race itself, which was pushed forward to a Saturday due to extreme weather forecasts on the Sunday that ultimately cancelled the sprint race for that weekend, DiGi was in an intense fight for second with Johann Zarco, Pecco Bagnaia and Brad Binder. However, on the final lap, all four of them caught up to race leader Jorge Martin, whose gamble of starting on a soft rear tyre, which saw him pull away from the rest of the pack, was starting to backfire. Going into turn 4, which is named Miller Corner, Zarco went for a move on his teammate to take the lead, which also allowed Martin's rival Pecco to move up to second. Coming out of the Siberia corner, DiGi, thanks to having a better rear tyre, was able to get better traction compared to Martin to take the final podium spot at turn 7, and he would keep hold of that position for the remainder of the race, as while Johann Zarco went on to take a long-awaited first ever Premier Class win, DiGi came through to take his first ever Premier Class podium. People who had watched DiGi throughout Moto3 and Moto2 believed that he was never given a proper opportunity to demonstrate the speed that he was capable of. Now, after being released and essentially having nothing to lose, given he already lost his ride at Gresini, he was finally able to show the speed that people knew he had in him. It was around this point that people were speculating that he could take Marc Marquez's seat at Repsol Honda in essentially a swap move. However, those rumours quickly died down, as it was very clear that the team were not interested in DiGi and were looking more at Miguel Oliveira, who was riding for RNF Aprilia that season, and Luca Marini, who despite signing a new contract with VR46, did have an option clause to be released. Many thought that DiGi could join VR46 should Marini join Repsol Honda, however this was shot down by VR46 team director and Valentino Rossi's good friend Usio Salucci, who said that they were looking for a Moto2 rider should Marini decide to lead, with the likes of Fermin Aldeguer, who had an impressive end to the season in Moto2 being rumoured, to even Tony Arbolino being considered. It was looking like, despite finally showing some great pace, that DiGi was on his way out of the Premier Class. But DiGi was not going to give up without a fight. He just needed one race to convince any team, whether that be Repsol Honda, RNF Aprilia or even VR46, that he deserved to stay on the grid. And oh boy, did that race come. The penultimate round of the 2023 season took the MotoGP fraternity to the Losail International Circuit in Qatar. The race was held a lot later than normal due to upgrades being done to the facilities to not only accommodate MotoGP but also Formula 1, who had a 10-year contract with the circuit to host the Qatar Grand Prix for Formula 1. Throughout practice, DiGi along with his teammate Alex Marquez were showing some amazing pace, being towards the sharp end of the timing screens. And this would transfer over into qualifying, as DiGi would qualify on the front row in second place, just outpacing his teammate by 0.06 of a second and just missing out on pole to Luca Marini by just over a tenth. Despite bogging down at the start in the sprint race, DiGi would carve his way back through the field and would engage himself in a battle for the sprint win with championship contender Jorge Martin. DiGi tried everything to crap Jorge into a mistake, but in the end Martin held his nerve to take another sprint win. However, despite missing out on the win, DiGi proved to everyone that he had the speed to win a race, and he would have another opportunity to do so in the main race on Sunday. His start for Sunday's race would be better than the sprint race, but he would still lose a place to championship leader Pecco Bagnaia, who got a lightning start from 4th on the grid. The following lap, teammate Alex Marquez would overtake DiGi at the beginning of the triple right-hander. However, 2 laps later, DiGi would start to get the hammer down and re-overtook his teammate to get back into the podium places. Then, 2 laps later, DiGi would pull off an aggressive move on Marini at turn 6 to claim second place. Then, thanks to Alex Marini and Binder squabbling behind, DiGi was able to pull a gap and now would set his sights on race leader Pecco Bagnaia. For many laps, DiGi would follow and keep up with Pecco, preserving his tyres in the process, until with 7 laps to go, DiGi would start to attack Pecco, bringing the gap down to just over a tenth. DiGi for the next 3 laps would try and find a way through on Pecco, with Pecco doing everything in his power to keep him back, given he was in a title fight with Martin. With 4 laps to go, DiGi was still putting Pecco under pressure, doing everything he could to get past. And then coming out of turn 10, DiGi got a good run around turn 11 on Pecco, and then just before the triple right-hander, he made his move. DiGi took the lead of the race, but Pecco, despite having a championship to worry about, wasn't going to give up without a fight. Heading down towards turn 1 with 3 laps to go, Pecco tried to re-overtake DiGi. However, he was late on the brakes, and he went straight on. Seeing his championship flash in front of him for a brief second, Pecco, after making that mistake, settled in for the rest of the race. DiGi, meanwhile, had built up a gap as a result, and coming out of the final corner on the last lap, he would come through to finally take his first ever Premier Class win. After a frustrating first half of the season that resulted in him losing his ride with Gresini, DiGi finally got redemption and finally proved to everyone that he was good enough to be in the Premier Class. His win had similarities to that of Sergio Perez in Formula 1. Back in 2020, Checo had lost his drive at Racing Point despite having 2 years left on his contract to make way for Sebastian Vettel in time for the team rebranding as Aston Martin. Like with DiGi, many people believed that he was not going to be on the grid in 2021, and also like with DiGi, a lot of seats were already taken, with Red Bull being unlikely to take him given he wasn't in the Red Bull Academy and wasn't driving for their sister team AlphaTauri. However, at the penultimate race of the season, which ironically also took place at night and was also in the Middle East, Checo performed one of the greatest comebacks in Formula 1 history, as after being in a first lap collision with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, Checo carved his way back through the field from the back of the pack to get himself up to third. Then, after the Mercedes hit trouble during their pit stop whilst on the safety car, Checo assumed the lead, and despite George Russell, who was substituting for Lewis Hamilton due to him picking up the beer virus, catching back up to Checo until he had a slow puncture which prevented him from winning, Checo came through to take his first ever win after an amazing drive. It was because of this drive that Checo was able to save his Formula 1 career, as despite it looking like that Red Bull was going to re-sign the struggling Alexander Albon, Red Bull did a complete 180 and signed Checo to Red Bull from 2021 to become Max Verstappen's new teammate. People were hoping after he got his first ever Premier Class win that the same would happen with DiGi. At Valencia, DiGi would once again fight for the win, but this time would just miss out to Pecco Bagnaia, who would win his second title on that day. Although if DiGi did get the win, it would have been taken away from him anyway, as he was later penalised due to the stupid tyre rule that MotoGP has. But either way, DiGi had proved himself. Now he had to hope he had done enough to stay in the Premier Class. 2 days later, it was announced that Luca Marini would indeed be leaving VR46 to join Repsol Honda alongside Joan Mir on a 2-year contract. This left a vacancy at VR46, and despite what Usio said at the Qatar Grand Prix press conference, it wouldn't be a rookie that would take the vacant seat. Instead, on the same day Marini was announced to be joining Repsol Honda, VR46 dropped this announcement.
Ciao ragazzi, quest'anno ci divertiamo.
In a complete 180 similar to what Red Bull did with Checo in F1, it was announced that DiGi would still be on the Premier Class grid in 2024 and he would be replacing Luca Marini at VR46. For DiGi, it was a relief. His amazing end to 2023 was enough to land him a ride in the Premier Class, and everyone was happy to see that DiGi would still be on the grid in 2024. For me, this is one of the most amazing turnarounds in form I have ever seen from anyone, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer person. Yes, you could make the argument that because he had nothing to lose, he could afford to ride at that speed. However, I'd argue he was riding like he was still under pressure. Under pressure to give himself a ride for 2024, and so had to ride his arse off to ensure any of the teams on the grid gave him a chance. And when it was announced that Marini was going to Repsol Honda, VR46 after DiGi won at Losail didn't hesitate to give him a contract. Now, how do I believe he will get on in 2024? Honestly, I don't know. I hope for his sake that he is able to continue the impressive showing that he had at the end of 2023 into 2024 as well, as I believe if he can do that, he could give his new teammate Marco Bezzecchi a run for his money. I'm not saying that he will beat Bez, as I believe Bez is a better rider than DiGi, but if he can get closer to him than what Marini could when he was Bez's teammate, then I think VR46 will have an even stronger season compared to the amazing season they already had in 2023. And the fact that DiGi will be riding on equipment that he is familiar with, given that VR46 also use year-old Ducatis like Gresini do, it should make that easier for him. However, there is a part of me that worries he will fall off again like he did in the first half of 2023, and if that does happen, where does DiGi go from there? I hope for his sake that isn't the case, as he's already proved me wrong once already. As I will be completely honest, I didn't really rate the guy until he put in those amazing performances at the end of 2023. Glad I was wrong about him. So best of luck to DiGi, and hopefully he'll have an amazing 2024, as the Ducati Cup, which a friend of mine on Discord has called it, given how dominant Ducati are at the moment, would be even stronger if Pecco, a fully fit Ania, Marquez, Bez and Martin would be joined by an informed DiGi. Although, there is one other concern I have. Even if DiGi does have an amazing year in 2024, I do fear he will drop back in 2025, given the rumours that VR46 could become the new satellite team for Yamaha, given that Rossi is a long-time ambassador for the Japanese manufacturer. But we'll wait and see what happens. Merry Christmas everyone, and I'll see you in the new year, where I will go through the upload scheduling plans for 2024 and beyond. Merry Christmas everyone, and a Happy New Year.